everybody, and welcome to another video. And essentially in today's video we'll be talking about hosting your first lolita meet and a few tips and tricks I've kind of got from hosting my meets and kind of attending other people's, and I hope that this will really help out in getting your first lolita meet. So the first thing I'd say in general before hosting your very first meet is that for better turnout in general, if you can kind of be active in your community and go to meets so people are aware of who you are, especially if you do decide to host your meet at your house or something, if people don't really know you, there might be like that uncomfortable sort of thing where people are uneasy about going to meeting you for the first time there. So in general, I find having a lolita meet where you already have quite a few members that you know is a good starting point for having a really solid meet for the so we can avoid that worst case scenario where like no one comes. So the second bit I'd like to talk about is kind of the two different types of lolita meets. I find that they kind of range from more like a casual picnic or maybe like going to someone's house versus like the really high-end, high teas and like expensive booking places. The first part I'd probably talk about is probably high teas because I have more experience in that, and then I'll talk a little bit more about maybe more casual meetups. So if you do decide to host a high tea, often first up is probably very important to call in advance for booking times. Often with the more expensive places, they're very busy and you might have to end up booking like a month in advance, or obviously if they're less busy it could be less, it kind of depends, and securing your spot. Often I recommend even putting up a poll just to see what times people might be free with the times that you're available to host, and that generally gives you an idea of numbers for bookings. The second part is that obviously I would usually call in for bookings and ask about the kind of terms for payment. From my experience, I find some places do require a deposit or upfront money, and that's very important in that for my second step in making sure for numbers that people actually are paying. Once again, once you do secure your booking, the second step is basically request for payment. This kind of goes into my first point where if people are not familiar with you, they might not be very easy with obviously sending you funds. So once it happens, just probably another warning as well, if you do request payment via PayPal, there is a fee on top of that. So if people are uneasy about sending you money, I guess, you can maybe request the fee on top if they don't want to do friends and family. But in general, if your community obviously knows you, bank is the best way to go, or friends and family and PayPal, because if people start paying you via goods and services, you're obviously going to lose money during the high tea event. In general, then after that, I usually host events via Facebook. Obviously, we'd have had a poll with the majority voting for that day, but I find the second part is that you need people to then reconfirm that they are going to your event. I often have a rule that if you can't pay the event, you're not really locked in. The reason why is that I've definitely had a few people in the past where they say, yep, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna pay, and then they just pull out. So in that sense, I always say, if you're going to the event, I would need upfront cost for it. If you're feeling generous, I guess, you could do a partial payment plan with them if they really need it. But once again, I'm just saying, this is not a charity, and if you are hosting an event at a more expensive place, it'd be a real pain to be out of pocket, because I find a lot of these bigger places you do take a penalty if people don't show up on the day. Or pull out. I know the recent one I'll be hosting up has a 48-hour time limit that if you don't pull out during then, you will get charged the full amount, and that's understandable because obviously these places are quite busy and fully booked. So once obviously you've sorted out payment, I tend to kind of have a little list on Facebook posts I'll kind of tick off just to kind of help with how smooth it'll go. The first thing usually is you'd have a menu and general price. This will just talk about what's on the menu and what's to offer. And this will kind of lead into my second post, where I'll usually have a dietary requirements post. This is where basically people can put in food allergies or special dietary requirements, such as being vegetarian or allergies, or maybe for religious reasons. And I find in general popping a post there just makes it easy for people to compile on the comments what they can and can't. It's important to once again do this in advance because different restaurants will have different rules on what they can do with food. I know some places they allow like substitutions and like swaps. Others will provide like a kind of a totally different alternative menu. Well, some places will simply not offer alternatives, and I have definitely been to places like that as well. So it's important as well just to kind of be able to cross-check and come back to people and let them know whether their dietary requirement can be met or not. So that'd be kind of the second post I usually put. Usually then as well, I'd also give a heads up on request of funds and when the final day would be. This once again is also for you as the host, so you don't end up chasing people who like promise you and then don't pay up, and then you're stuck with maybe, you know, chasing up money that's not going to come to you. So that's just an easy one for the host where you'd have a cutoff date on when the funds would be like have to be in by. And usually it'd be in a Facebook event, so you'd be able to have people saying going or maybe, and usually I'll just, you know, go and ask those people individually whether they're going or not. So after you have like kind of that, I often have like a little post on travel and other and like general things. Usually as well if it's like an event, I always take into consideration for Lolitas who potentially can't drive. So usually there's like, I'll take a kind of a picture of where the close bus stations or trains are and potential parking areas just to make it easier to take the guesswork out of it. Other things would probably be like, you know, I guess if you want to take takeaway containers, if you want to save things for later rather than getting them chucked out. I guess it is expensive high tea if you're, you know, cheap enough, I guess. Cuff me. And eventually if you don't eat anything, you know, it doesn't hurt to take it home. So I recommend takeaway containers, putting it in there if anyone wants to do that. The other one would probably be a general reminder for anyone who needs to take any medicine or bring sort of medical things with them, just like a small reminder for them. And finally, it's important to usually put in your terms and warnings if anyone needs to pull out or what happens, everyone's kind of clued in regards to that spectrum if for some reason someone can't make it. Often it's, you know, if you just clearly state there'll be a penalty, you won't get your money back, it just saves the guesswork and people understand when they're paying and are aware what happens if they're not able to come. So unfortunately that does happen, but it's important to put that information in there. So, I guess if I can find it, I'll pop up like one of my last Lolita meets. I was hoping that it'd be a full video, but my phone died. So in general, I find once you're actually at the event, it's good to just come early. That way, you know, before your guests, you can make sure, you know, you can check in with staff, tell them, you know, anything's up, that you're coming and everything's all right. And in general, as the host, I like to be the last one to leave. So that way you're making sure everyone's kind of got a trip home and back and that no one's just kind of stuck there. So that's usually how I organize events. The second kind of half of Lolita events would be your more casual meets. These would be at like kind of less strict on like bookings and who's going, but more of a, you know, open party. They're kind of like free and anyone can come. The two types I've kind of seen in general tend to be like in parks and picnics or like at houses. I will say, just for like safety reasons, I personally don't like events at houses. Purely for the fact that often Lolita groups are kind of like closed groups, but anyone could be in there, and I feel very uncomfortable about giving my address out on places. I haven't personally hosted a house event, but in the situation of that, I would take the effort to PM people my address, and I wouldn't want to go put it out there. I don't think there's anything wrong with hosting events at your house, but just as the extra security, I would bring that up, just to be safe. The other one would be parks and picnics, which once again is quite safe, I guess. Like if there's people you know in general, it doesn't hurt to have like a good friend for like these events to always come with you, so it's not like a quite party West Coast to West, you have your like a few friends at the event. I will say though, with the more casual events, there's definitely harder to cater for in that often, because there's no like booking to see who's paid and who's not, numbers get really high like and low, and it's really hard. Like whether a whole people hit going and then they don't come. Usually in general people hit go in, not come, and in that sense, yeah, it's just something to pay attention for. I guess it's always best to like over prep than under prep, but yeah, those events tend to be a little bit more like interesting in regards to organising. I haven't done too many of them, but in that sense, you know, they're a lot more casual, anyone can come, you get more people coming in and out. And once again, rock up early, make sure like, you know, everything's kind of alright, and then I generally like to be one of the later ones to leave, to make sure, obviously it's your house, yeah, you would, you know, shoo everyone out. So this is kind of like the extra session I kind of thought after filming. If you are a minor, I don't recommend or doing any of the bigger high tea events until you kind of get, I guess, cards and stuff, because often they will ask for those sort of things. The second part that I'm just going to probably reiterate as well is safety and security when organising a lolita meet. And in general, just make sure that, you know, if you're giving out any names or any banking details for like payment, I don't want to be popping them on the page. I tend to just PM people if they seem as well like active in the community and you know them, that would be fine. But yeah, just keep that in mind as well for security in hosting your meets, just so you're nice and safe. So I hope that kind of helps in regards to organising lolita meets. Hopefully I haven't missed anything, and then I'd probably just write it down in the comments, which might make it a bit more easier. But yeah, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. So bye for now, and thanks for watching.